Hi guys, so this is a video about the show me tell me part of the driving test. So just a brief overview of the show me and tell me parts. The show me part is for you to operate one of 7 controls whilst you're driving along. Now, always before the examiner asks you to operate the control, they will always start with when it's safe to do so. So for example, they may say to you, when it's safe to do so, I would like you to operate the rear demister. So because they've said when it's safe to do so, it's important that you don't necessarily have to rush and do that immediately. You might be dealing with a hazard or a roundabout or some parked cars or things like that. So don't rush into doing it. Take your time and pick the right moment to do it. Okay, and we'll show you the 7 controls that you might have to use. If you forget where the control is, that's not a problem, because the examiner will actually pull you over to the side of the road and they'll actually show you where the control is, because this is not a test of you knowing where the control is. This is a test that you know that you can operate it safely without losing control of the car. The tell me part of the test, that consists of 14 questions, and the examiner will ask you one tell me question at the beginning of the test. Now, you can't fail for getting the tell me question wrong. You can get a minor fault, but my view is that you should study and you should know, because first impressions count, and it is your first chance to impress the examiner. So the examiner will ask you at the test centre, either when you're outside of the car, if it's one of the questions that can be done outside, or inside the car, to tell you something about the car. You've got the document that you can download, and what I would suggest is that if there's any questions that you're really struggling with, put them on a post-it note and put it somewhere where you'll see it every day, especially question 2 and question 4 about the tyre pressures and tyre treads, because they're the ones that people struggle with. So put those answers on a post-it note, stick it on your wardrobe or on your mirror or on your laptop or wherever you spend most of your time during the day, and that will just help you to remember the answers. I've got a document for you. You can go into the description and download the document, which is a good idea, because then you can print it off. You can highlight off any questions that you might struggle with. We're going to start with the show me questions first. In the tell me questions, the questions number 2 and 4 are usually the questions that people struggle with. They're the ones about the tyre pressures and the tyre treads. But we'll go on to the show me questions first. There are 7 of them. Now these are questions that are done while you're driving along. So when you're on your driving test, the examiner will ask you to do one of these 7 things while you're driving. And this is not a test of you knowing where the control is. This is a test of you being able to operate the control without losing control of the car. So for example, you shouldn't be swerving while you're operating control. You shouldn't take your eyes off the road for too long. You shouldn't slow down too much. That's a common one, that people come off the gas and slow down while they're working the control. So it's more of a test of you being able to operate the control. Just on that note, as a backup plan, if you were to forget where the control is, you can just mention that to the examiner, and surprisingly, they will actually pull you in at the side of the road. They'll show you where the control is, then they'll get you to drive on again, and then get you to operate control while you're driving along. So there's actually 7 of the show me questions, and we're going to start with the first 2, which are the front and rear demisters. Now, my car's a Vauxhall Corsa, so they might be different on your car, so you should get used to your controls on your car or on your driving instructor's car. So we're going to start with the first 2, which are the front and rear demister. Okay, so the front demister is just here on the Corsa, and we'll press this, and you see it lights up. You can hear it also has blown into action. After we turned it on, hopefully without losing any control, then you'll be asked to switch it off as well. So that's the front demister. On the other side, next to the other round button, so it's quite easy to find, is the rear demister here. And simply press that one. You'll probably drive on for a few seconds, and then they'll ask you to switch it off. So there's the front and rear demisters for you. Okay, so next we're going to move on to lowering the driver's side front window, and the button's just here. Press the button down, window will go down. If you hold it for a few seconds, it will go all the way down, and a few moments later you'll be bringing it back up. So hold the button, let it go after a few seconds, and the window will go all the way up. So moving on to the next show me question, and that would be when it's safe to do so, show me how to sound the horn. So this is a nice easy one. On the Vauxhall Corsa, we would just press on there, and as you can see, that will sound the horn. Okay guys, so moving on to the windscreen washers now. This is our wiper control. If we pull the wiper control towards us, we can see that washes the front screen. And if we push it away from us, you won't be able to see this in the video, but as I push it away from us, it's washing the back screen. Okay, finally we're moving on to the light switch. As you're driving along, the examiner will say to you, okay, when it's safe to do so, I'd like you to show me how to turn on the dipped headlights. On the Corsa, the light switch is just here, and we turn it 2 clicks to the right. 1, 2, our dipped headlights are on, and then a moment later, we'll turn it 2 clicks back to the left, which will put it back on the automatic setting. Okay, moving on to the tell me questions now, and probably the easiest way for me to do this is read off the sheet and give you the answers, and we'll do some demonstrations as well. So there's 14 tell me questions, and remember, you can't fail your test if you get them wrong, but first impressions count, so do try and revise these questions and get to know them. So question 1 is, tell me how you check that the brakes are working before starting the journey. And the correct answer to give is that the brakes should be tested as you set off. The brakes should not feel spongy or slack, and your vehicle should not pull to one side. Question 2 is, tell me where you find the information for the recommended tyre pressures for this car and how the tyre pressures should be checked. Now, this is one of the questions that pupils struggle with because it's actually a 5-part answer. So I would suggest putting this on a post-it note. The first part of the answer is the information is in the manufacturer's guide. We should use a reliable pressure gauge. That's a gauge, not a gauge. Check and adjust the tyres when the tyres are cold. Check the spare tyre and remember to refit your valve cap. So that's the 5 parts of the answer to that one. Question 3 is an easy one. Tell me how you make sure your head restraint is correctly adjusted so it provides the best protection in the event of a crash. So the correct answer here is that the rigid part of the head restraint should be behind your eyes and ears and as close to the head as comfortable. The reason for that last part is because some head restraints adjust backwards and forwards. Mine don't, it just goes up and down, but it's as close to the head as possible or as comfortable. Question 4, tell me how you check the tyres to ensure they have sufficient tread depth and that their general condition is safe to use on the road. Now, this is another one that pupils find really hard to learn. And on your sheet that you can download, you'll notice that the first part of the answer I've put in bold because quite often pupils forget to mention the first part of the answer. So the first part of the answer is that there should be no cuts or bulges in the tyre. And the second part is that the tyre should have at least 1.6 millimetres of tread depth across the central 3/4 of the tyre and all the way around. Question 5 is, tell me how you check the headlights and tail lights are working. The examiner will say to you, you don't need to exit the vehicle because a few years ago you had to get out, but you don't need to now. So your answer for this one would be that you would turn the ignition on and your headlights on, and then you'd walk around the vehicle and check that they're working. As it's a tell me question, you don't have to physically check the lights. Question 6, tell me how you know if there's a problem with your anti-lock braking system. Quite an easy one, this one, and the answer you give to the examiner is that a warning light should come up on the dashboard if there's a problem with your anti-lock braking system. Question 7, tell me how you check the direction indicators are working. You don't need to exit the vehicle. Again, a fairly straightforward answer this. You don't have to have the ignition on, but the answer would be a simple one that I'd put my hazard warning lights on and then I'd walk around the vehicle and just check that all the indicators are working. There has been occasions when the examiners have asked the pupil to actually do it using the indicator switch rather than the hazard warning lights, but I don't think that's likely to happen now because you don't have to physically do the check. Question 8. Tell me how you check the brake lights are working on the car. So on this one, we would say I would turn the ignition on and then I press my brake pedal and ask somebody to check for me, or I could make use of reflections in windows or doors, etc. Question 8, tell me how you check the power assisted steering is working before starting the journey. So I'll actually demonstrate this one for you. I'll turn my engine off for the moment. So when the engine is off, the steering feels very heavy. And then if we check handbrake and neutral before we restart the engine, once the engine is started, the steering feels much lighter. So that's how we would check the power steering. The examiners may ask you to give a demonstration of that. They may not. Okay, so it might be just enough to just explain it to them. Question 10, tell me how you switch on the rear fog lights and explain to me when you'd use them. And again, they'll say to you, you don't need to get out of the vehicle. So we'd have to have the ignition on for this. So the answer we would give is I'd turn the ignition on and the headlights on, and then put the rear fog lights on, and a warning light will come up on the dashboard. And rear fog lights must only be used if visibility is less than 100 meters. Okay, so that would be ignition on, headlights on, fog lights on, and only should be used when visibility is less than 100 meters. Question 11, this is the last one before we need to get out of the car. So tell me how you switch your headlight from dipped beam to main beam, and tell me how you know the main beam is on. Well, I'll demonstrate this one as well. So I'll get the ignition on, turn my headlights 2 clicks to the right, and then for the main beam I use this stalk here, push it forward, and how I know the main beam is on is because a blue light has appeared on the dashboard, and that tells us that the main beam is on. Okay, so we're going to get out of the car now to do the last 3 questions, because these all involve opening the bonnet. So we'll see you on the outside. Okay, so the next 3 questions all involve lifting up the bonnet. So to lift up the bonnet, down in the passenger side here, we've got this lever, which I'm going to pull. You might hear the bonnet pop open. And then as we come out, it's a good idea to close the door in case the wind catches the door. I'll move to the front of the car. On the Vauxhall Corsa, it's quite easy to find where we open the bonnet, because there's like a little gap or a hole here. So slide my hand in, and this is what I was pressing. Bring this up, and then we have to move around slightly, take the prop and pop it into here. So first of all, underneath the bonnet, we're going to look at checking the oil, and we would explain to the examiner that we would remove the dipstick, take it out and wipe it, and then put the dipstick back in, take it out again, and check that the oil level is between minimum and maximum. The examiner might then ask you where would you need to add the oil if it needed oil, and we would point to this one here. There's no need to touch anything. Don't get your hands dirty. They don't want you to touch anything. You've got to get in the car and drive in a moment, so just point to whatever you need to. The coolant is the next one. So on the Corsa, the engine coolant is just here. And we would just check that the level is between the minimum and maximum, and that's all we need to do. So point to the container, explain it should be between minimum and maximum, and then finally the brake fluid over here, and it's the same answer. We point to this container and we explain that the brake fluid level should be between the minimum and maximum. So thanks for watching. Please give us a like and share if you enjoyed the videos, and subscribe for more. If you've any questions, please let us know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.